Corruption has been a fact of Bulgarian life for years, taking in government, big business and the judiciary. It costs the economy an estimated 22% of GDP each year. That's a lot to clean up.
The most corrupt government in Europe is a country by the name of Ukraine. Now, you may have heard of this country, Ukraine. It is the most corrupt government in Europe. The Guardian did a deep dive on Ukraine's corruption. In fact, right now, you can go to the U.S. State Department's website and you can see how they document Ukraine's corruption as late as the year 2021. In fact, the United States State Department discourages and even warns U.S. businesses from doing business in Ukraine due to widespread corruption.
You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today.
Voters are going to the polls in Bulgaria for the second time in 3 months. Elections in the spring were inconclusive. No party won enough support to form a government. This time, two parties have been running neck and neck in opinion polls, one populist and the other pro-Europe. Bulgarians are confronted by alarming revelations of state corruption. Transparency International describes it as the worst in the EU.
The U.S. State Department in 2021 detailed how the Ukrainian government has a history of making people disappear at the hand of their secret police. So we were shocked. We were shocked to learn overnight that there was gambling going on inside this establishment, that the corruption in Ukraine is even worse than ever. The Ukrainian government confirmed the resignation of multiple high-ranking Ukrainian officials caught in a massive corruption scheme. This is being called the largest mass resignation and corruption scandal since the Russian invasion began. So far, over a dozen high-ranking Ukrainian officials have quit their posts after it was revealed that they were stealing U.S. aid money. So your tax dollars, and not just U.S. money, European money, money from the EU, money from all over the world, is being stolen to enrich themselves, buying expensive cars, embezzling money, bribery, buying houses. The list of offenses is quite long, actually, when you go through it. All of this is happening, of course, while common people suffering under wartime conditions who are paying exorbitant energy costs. Indicators today that gas prices are going to be surging again in the next coming weeks. There are a couple of big indicators on that. Diesel prices, etc. Natural gas, of course, is up. Electricity costs are through the roof. Food shortages. So you're suffering, but they're lining their pockets off of your money. Here's just a small sample of the people that were caught stealing. I'm not going to really attempt to speak all of their names, but here's just a laundry list. Deputy prosecutor. Here's the deputy prosecutor. The deputy minister for development of communities and territories. The deputy minister for development of communities and territories, another one. Nagoda. They were all in this. Deputy minister of social policy. The regional governors of multiple regions, Zaporizhia, Kiev, Sumy, Kherson, Dnipropetrovsk. Am I saying that right? I don't know. And then, of course, last week we saw the Ukrainian air defenses blew up the helicopter that was carrying the interior minister alongside his deputy minister and their state secretary. Here was this incident, of course. Here's what's left of that helicopter. So corruption, major members of the government stealing, caught up in this corruption scandal, and then shot out of the sky.
Should not fool ourselves that this kind of government corruption is over now in less than a decade. It's just not there any longer.
And again, to my point, if you went on the U.S. State Department's website in 2021, it had a laundry list of egregious offenses and why United States, if you're in business, you should avoid doing business in Ukraine because of all of these levels of corruption. So this is not new, but I guess suddenly when February of 2022 rolls around, then suddenly we forget that stuff, right? We just ignore the corruption. Well, one of the names on this list is a scumbag by the name of Vyacheslav Shapovalov. This guy was in charge of the Army's logistical support, this guy. Getting food and supplies to the guys that need it most. Instead of that, though, he was lining his pockets by charging the United States inflated prices for food rations. and then pocketing the rest, the difference. So, this MRE, this meal ready to eat, actually costs $2, but he's charging $6 and then pocketing the difference. All of this reminds me of how Democrats refused to appoint a Ukrainian auditor when Senator Rand Paul withheld his vote on the spending in Ukraine. And he was saying, look, we need to have an auditor. He wanted to make sure that billions being sent to Ukraine wasn't being stolen or mishandled like it was in Afghanistan. Of course, he withheld his vote. Democrats voted against the auditor. Watch.
If this gift to Ukraine passes, our total aid to Ukraine will almost equal the entire military budget of Russia. And it's not as if we have that money lying around. We will have to borrow that money from China to send it to Ukraine. The cost of this package we are voting on today is more than the U.S. spent during the first year of the U.S. conflict in Afghanistan. Congress authorized force, and the president sent troops into the conflict. The same cannot be said of Ukraine. This proposal towers over domestic priorities as well.
Then how high does this corruption go?
And how much will it touch Zelensky?
Right.
I mean, the global press has done a really good job pretending that it doesn't touch him at all. And just like he was surrounded by these people, that's a shame.
They ignore all of the houses that he owns.
Yes.
When it was seen that his wife was spending $40,000 in Paris, right after asking the West for more money, that was swept under the table, right? You're not supposed to know about that. All of these people quit surrounding Zelensky. How high does this go? These are his people. So the walls are closing in on him. Now, the real question is, when does this get to Zelensky, right? When does it get to a point where it closes in around him? And are we seeing that right now? It appears so. These things don't just happen, right? A helicopter shot down. All of these members of your inner circle are now resigning over corruption. How does this happen? Who's putting the screws to him? Meanwhile, American businesses are forbidden from doing business in Russia because of sanctions. They're being encouraged to do business in Ukraine, though. What the hell? Really? Didn't you hear my State Department example just a minute ago? Like, the State Department's telling American businesses you probably should avoid Ukraine because it's full of corruption, so probably not a great place to do business. But now we're actively encouraging business in Ukraine and telling you not to do business in Russia. See the hypocrisy and double standards here. The most corrupt government in Europe you're being encouraged to do business with. Because this is all theater, of course, right? Yesterday, during a business breakfast that was organized by the U.S. government and Ukrainian leaders and American businesses, you had the CEOs of BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, Westinghouse, all announcing major plans to partner with Ukraine and reconstruct Ukraine. Perfect opportunity, right? Again, the U.S. State Department was up until last year warning Americans and American businesses to avoid doing business with the corrupt Ukraine. So what changed? Well, so yesterday we got some major announcements. BlackRock plans to turn Ukraine into, quote, a beacon of capitalism, they say. Well, maybe you could start with the government itself, which is actively, dictatorial at this point, going after and closing down churches, going after and disappearing opposition leaders and journalists. Capitalistic? You're going to make this a beacon of capitalism? And Goldman Sachs says that Ukraine's reconstruction will offer, quote, good economic incentives for real return and investment. Here's how the Washington Post framed it this morning. At the same breakfast session, Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, spoke of his plans to help coordinate billions of dollars worth of reconstruction financing for Ukraine, saying he hoped the initiative would also turn the country into a beacon of capitalism. David Solomon, CEO of Goldman Sachs, spoke cheerily of Ukraine's post-war future. There's no question that as you rebuild, there will be good economic incentives for real return and real investment, he said. And not to be outdone, of course, Volodymyr Zelensky, with the coordination of the U.S. government, joined the meeting to thank these businesses for their money. And he explained how all of these weapons contractors, this is an unbelievable piece of video. Wake up, grandma, get your kids, watch this piece of video. They have to pinch yourself to see what he says. He explained how all of these weapons contractors are able to use Ukraine to make massive profits. Come to Ukraine, you will benefit. Weapons contractors, everything. Ukraine will be your breadbasket. Watch.
It is obvious that American business can become the locomotive that will once again push forward global economic growth. We have already managed to attract attention and have cooperation with such giants of the international financial and investment world as BlackRock, JP Morgan, and Goldman Sachs. Such American brands as Starlink or Westinghouse have already become part of our Ukrainian way. Your brilliant defense systems, such as HIMARS or Bradleys, are already uniting our history of freedom with your enterprises. We are waiting for Patriots. We are looking closely at Abrams. Thousands of such examples are possible, and everyone can become a big business by working with Ukraine in all sectors, from weapons and defense to construction, from communication to agriculture, from transport to IT, from banks to medicine. And I believe that freedom must always win.
So when you come to do business there, what we're doing is basically laundering money. That's basically what we're doing. So if you come and do business here, you're getting laundered money. That's how this works. I like your American weapons.